Hello everyone. Thanks for checking out this video. I'm going to talk to you now about using R Markdown, or walk you through some of the steps for how I apply this tool. I think you'll find it really useful. I hope you'll work it into your workflow. Hope you find this tutorial helpful. And these are my contacts. If you have any questions, you can get in touch with me to find out more, get some support. I don't know how much help I can be, but I will do my very best. So R Markdown, just to give you a little bit of an overview, you can visit the website, rmarkdown.rstudio.com, to find out a lot more than what I'll share here, a lot more details. RStudio, as you'll recall, is a fantastic community of programmers and an excellent piece of software for interfacing with the R programming language. And R Markdown is one way to generate various types of documents, slides, PDFs, or any other kinds of books, even websites. It's a really interactive, excellent tool. It integrates with LaTeX, Word, and other types of programming languages. So really versatile tool. My recommendation is that you use it. If you do, then you'll thank yourself. I can use my experience and the experience of my colleagues to say Markdown can drastically reduce your overall workflow. There is a bit of a learning curve, but ultimately you'll thank yourself for having gone through the trouble of learning it. Remember to save often, just as it is with any other writing tool, with any other programming tool. Save often and always keep a new version. And what might be even better than that is if you use Git, and perhaps you'll find another video of mine where I talk about how to use Git and GitHub. Markdown, the way that I use it is mainly with another piece of software, another library called Knitter, and that's by some of the same authors, including Yuhui Shi, who I'll talk more about here in a minute. Sometimes when you're using Markdown or any other tool, you're going to get stuck. And as I often say, I think Google is just a giant help file for using R. But when I do look things up and I try to find help, I usually find it on Stack Overflow. So have a look at rstudio.com, rmarkdown.rstudio.com, and also have a look at stackoverflow.com. But usually a web search is a good first start when you get stuck. You can also use a question mark with a function name or with any other tool's name that you're using in Markdown or in RStudio. I can demonstrate that again. So for example, if I am running the library chillr, and then I have a question, what is that thing? It has to load here. What is chillr? Then automatically, I've done that down here in the lower left-hand panel where I interface with the R directly, R programming language. And in the lower right-hand panel in RStudio, I just automatically get the help file for chillr, which is quite nice. The authors have written for us a general overview, and they've given us a few examples. So that's one important thing. When you get lost, use that question mark and with the function name in the R interface, and you'll get a help file. But if you get even more stuck and you don't understand the help file or whatever the issue is, then try adding R to your error message, to the thing that's confusing to you in a Google search or any other search engine, I suppose. And you will find that there are lots of other people who had the same problem or something very similar, and they've written about it, and they were confused and they figured it out, and they've left a paper trail there for you. And what's always astounding to me is that there are thousands of very talented programmers, much more talented than any of us at our institute, but although we have some very talented people, but there are lots of talented programmers, people who are developing the software, who are developing a lot of these libraries that we're using, a lot of these tools that we use. And they actually, for some reason, they scan the web, I don't know, in their free time, wherever they find that. They scan the web and they answer these problems. So you often find answers from the very people who developed this software in the first place, even for silly questions. Big, helpful, friendly community. So just some of the very basics of Markdown. It's from RStudio, and they even have a basics website. We can check that out. So RStudio, that is rmarkdown.rstudio.com/authoringbasics.html. And here we get a list of really some of the basic things that you need to know if you're going to write in Markdown. So like LaTeX or other languages, it's not the select and click options of Word, but it has a lot of the same functionalities and many more actually. So if we want to emphasize text, for example, we can use a single asterisk around the things that we want to have in italics, and a double asterisk around those things that we want to have in bold. Likewise with underlined, single and double, etc., etc. They walk us through a lot of the useful things here. We can add LaTeX equations, LaTeX. We can put links inside of the document, links not only to websites and things, but also links to other documents within our folder structure, etc. We'll walk through some of the details of that together soon, but that's rmarkdown.rstudio.com/authoringbasics to get some of those basic ideas. We can also get a lot of information from Yihui Shi. We can look through his code and see how he does things. And we learn a lot about common issues that people have and how to run this script to build something that we'd like to have ourselves in his own style. So what you want to do in order to make this happen, just to get our own little Markdown document started, we're going to open RStudio. That's this program you downloaded. If you've watched my other videos, you've downloaded this software, RStudio, and you're just going to open RStudio either from the app page or from a place where you have it stored on your an R project stored on your computer. Go ahead and open one, and then what we're going to do is open a Markdown file. That requires going here to the upper left-hand corner of RStudio, and you see a little plus there. You can click down, and then you'll find R Markdown, and even a prompt to create a new R Markdown document. So I can give it a title. I'm going to call it test. That's my name, C. Whitney. And I'm going to ask it to generate as a default output HTML, a PDF, or a Word. I'm going to say HTML. And I'm going to create right now a document format, although you can see here I have a presentation. This presentation that I'm sharing with you is built in Markdown. Or I could create a Shiny, or I could use some kind of template. But anyway, I'm going to start a Markdown document called test with my name as the author, and it's going to generate in HTML. So I click OK. And now you see that at the top I've got a title. It says test, the author, and it even has the date, and the output is set as HTML document. I could change this now inside of this little chunk of code, which tells the whole document how to format itself. So that's it. You open the document with selecting from that upper left-hand corner, drop down to R Markdown, and then provide. Well, the first thing you can do, actually, now that that's already opened, you can just knit. Yeah, this is the knitting. It prompts me now to save. You can just knit this, save it as text, test. And what we get is an HTML document generated from the code that was there. And we can check this HTML document against the script that was here inside of this R Markdown file. And we'll see here that all of this header information, title, test, author, C. Whitney, is right there. Is that showing up in my? Great. So yeah, title, test, author, C. Whitney, that's showing up, and the date is there as well. If we want that, there it is. Now, this is a setup. Each of these sections is called a chunk. I don't know why, we just call it a chunk. So this is a code chunk, and these 3 backticks, tell R Markdown when I'm writing R script, and it uses these as R script. In this case, I don't want these included in the script, so I'm just telling it to include equals false. That means do not include this. So you see it's missing from the HTML. And that's just for setting up the Markdown document. Now, when I use these hashtags, I'm actually telling it to put a header in my document. So 2 marks is a second level header. So I've said at the second level, put a header that says Markdown, R Markdown. And this is an R Markdown document. Markdown is a simple formatting syntax, etc., etc. And there you can see how we link to an HTML, because here we've just included inside of these ticks, just like in an HTML document, inside of these formatting functions here, inside of these symbols. And it puts a HTML link in our document. Here you can see how bold is used, knit button. Yeah, okay. And then what we're going to do, we're going to run some R script here. So summary cars. Cars is actually a data set. You can learn more about that by doing this, right? Question mark cars. And you can see that cars is a data set. It comes with R. It's actually built in. And it's about the speed and the stopping distances of cars. It's just a data set. So I want to get a summary of cars. So if I call this in the R console down here, summary cars, then I get that summary. And when I run it here as a code chunk, then I get the summary right in the HTML document. I can also do a plot. So I can plot pressure. Again, pressure, if we want to know what that is, we can do question mark. So there are lots of data sets included in the R programming language, and vapor pressure of mercury as a function of temperature is just a data set. It's helpful for people to play around with their different libraries and coding. So that data is included in R documentation, and that's all explained here in the help file. And basically I want to plot pressure. So that's what I do. I plot pressure here, and we can see as pressure increases and temperature increases, those are plotted together. Yeah, if we put echo equals false, then which we've done here, you can see there's echo equals false. Before I told you about include equals false, that is, don't put any of this, even the results, in my document. But this one is echo equals false. It means show the results, that is, show the plot, but don't show the code. So it doesn't say here plot. But if I remove that and then knit, now it'll show plot pressure, the R code, and the plot. This is often preferable, so that any readers of your R-based document can see also how you created the plot. Okay, that's the basics there. I've also created a slightly more in-depth example than test. And in this one, I've updated the header just slightly with an output HTML document default. That probably doesn't make that much of a difference. I want to emphasize a few things. Don't include any absolute paths. Avoid those when at all possible. Okay, so what we basically want to do is use relative paths. That is, paths to documents that are relative to the particular R Markdown or R project and R Markdown file. So the R Markdown file, the RMD file, is located here in teaching R Markdown. And I've got there a data file called participants data, and I'm just going to str, that is to ask for the structure of an object. So I'm going to ask for the structure of participants data. That's data from participants in our course over some years now. I'm going to plot something about their distance to work. And why don't I just knit this and show you what it does? So I can knit, and then we'll look at them side by side. But the main point there was just to say, read CSV, this function that reads CSV files, it reads table formats or comma-separated value formats, and basically it's just looking for a file that's in the same level as the R Markdown file. But on the other hand, I'm going to put a figure in here, and the figure is actually in a subfolder. So the Markdown file, if we go into files, the Markdown file is here, Markdown example. That's the one we're running right now. And then I have Markdown figure folder. So I have to tell it to go dig down one layer into the Markdown figure folder and then look for hex markdown.png. If you were with me right now, you'd see I have a lot of them on my computer. So I just put a bunch of those. There are different ways to do that. We can use knitter. That's the library by Yu Shi, and a function called include graphics. We can also just use the Markdown language directly. So that is referencing the file here in these parentheses, and in the square brackets, just giving a name to it. So what I've said, Markdown hex sticker, and then I've produced that that figure to go with that text. And I can also do this with no text. I don't have to say anything in those square brackets. It just shows up. Okay, so the other thing some of this is from the overview that I showed you from the Markdown website. But basically, emphasis, different types of emphasis include italics and bold, right? So we could have italic with one asterisk, as we said, and two asterisks for bold, or underlines, the same thing. Headers, 1, 2, and 3. We saw that from before, so I don't know why I used headers there with 2, but I can put 2 here for emphasis as well. Okay, so headers 1, 2, 3, and I don't think there's a fourth, and if you have to use a fourth header, maybe use bullets or something. Generally in documents, when there's like a fourth header, it's a bit too much. You have like 3.1.2.3. I don't know. And maybe that's necessary in some documentation, in which case you can probably find a workaround. I'm not familiar with it right now in Markdown, but I suspect if we tried, header 4 would be a bust. Let's knit. Now I've added my new header here for emphasis. Header 4 works. So if you need 4 headers, go right ahead. It seems to work. That's good. So lists. Unordered list, that is just bullets with sub-bullets, looks like this. So an asterisk before an item, and those items in a list, and pluses for the sub-items. For an ordered list, it actually doesn't matter if you just want a numbered list, let's say. It doesn't matter if you use 1, 2, 3. You can just call them 1, 1, 1. That's quite nice if you end up reorganizing lists over time. You don't need to keep remembering which number they have. It's automated when it knits. It knits 1, 1, 1 to 1, 2, and 3. And likewise with these plus signs for the sub items. Perhaps that would work if I did A. I don't know. Seems to make sense, doesn't it? Where's my... Yeah, so there you go. So likewise with the sub items. You don't need to remember A, B, C, for example. You can just add A, and it'll automatically update those to A, B, C when it knits. R code chunks will be evaluated and printed, of course. So as we said, and if you run multiple pieces of R code, so multiple calls, those will turn up in your HTML file as separate outputs. So for every result, there's a new output included in your, and that's the distance that the cars have traveled, right? I'm calling for the distance, and then I'm calling also for the speed, a summary of those things. So inline R code, this is something I like to use. So there were 50 cars studied. So here all I have to do is call something called nrow on cars data. Nrow is a function that, nrow, number of rows, it's in the base package. So in the base library, you've got something called nrow, and what this does is it tells you how many rows are in this data set. So the rows are the observations. So I want to know how many cars were studied in the cars library. I don't have to open an XML file or do something else to try to count everything. I can just use nrow cars, and it will print to 50 cars. To put links in your HTML document, if you're generating HTML documents, you will probably need to do this quite a bit. You can use a plain HTTP address, I guess HTTPS as well, and that will show up. Yeah, we can see. Or you can link a phrase. That's quite nice. So you can just say a phrase, and then after that, in parentheses, put the link, and now the phrase is linked. That's quite nice if you don't want to have big ugly chunks of code. Or for example, if you have a very long HTML code, you may just want to say the name of the website. You can do block quotes. So a friend once said, it's always better to give than to receive. If you use these little chunks like this, these little notes, then it will give a little block quote there. And you can use those same backticks that I talked about before to put things in a little box, so that it'll just be pre-formatted as with the R code. You can't really adjust that format. You can use inline code. Some people like to use backticks. Some people like to use these symbols for talking about R functions. So I can knit that, and it will show up the same. Backticks are what we generally use in our group, but that's you don't need to. You can use what you like. But the backticks, basically what it does is sets aside, again, in a pre-formatted way, it sets aside that particular piece of your text so that you can see, oh, this is referring to a function. You can also use LaTeX to do equations. Yeah, so I've added an equation here. Doesn't mean anything, it's just an equation, but I could write in LaTeX here, and it would understand, and it would print my LaTeX information there. When you're generating tables, if you want to generate tables, you can do that directly in Markdown. So you can just go ahead and write your table just like you want it. I do not recommend that because one little dash out of place and it messes the whole thing up. It's often the case that it's better to import something that you've generated in another format, but that's not so critical, and hopefully if you do have a small table, that will probably be fine. You can use manual line breaks. If you end a line with 2 or more spaces, it will break. The lines will break. Otherwise, it all goes on the same line. So here I've got 1 space, I guess. But if I do 2 spaces, sorry. If I go 2 spaces, let's see if that's true. Yeah, so if you add 2 spaces here, it goes on the same line, or it goes to another line. But if there's only 1 space at the end, then it will automatically format it so that it will break lines according to the width of the page. So, and if anybody's familiar with actually writing directly in HTML, then you can do that. So I've subscripted here. Roses are red, subscript in blue, underline, superscript, and strike through, showing you how to do all of those things. So in order to do subscript, I needed to use HTML, but of course this is an HTML file, so it can understand that. Underline as well with HTML. Superscript is something that is understood directly by Markdown, and so is strike through. So if I use two of these tilde signs around my word, then it will be, or around any set of text, then it will, and strike through, so it rhymes. So you can see even with the space and two words, it'll also strike through all of that. Good. That's basically Markdown. At least as much as I was thinking to show you today. There is a little bit of a learning curve, of course. The main thing to do is to really have a document that you'd like to build so that you can start playing around and generating something. But I wish you a lot of luck. Thank you for watching.